In the dark woods, Prince Cheon is in a dire situation, running for his life. He dashes up the mountain but stumbles, injuring his leg. As he struggles to get up, he questions if he's been playing into someone else's hands all along. The masked warrior, showing no mercy, sarcastically praises Cheon for making it this far. The other masked warrior laughs, commenting that the weight nearly put him to sleep. Cheon, realizing he has no strength left to escape, regrets abandoning his plans to enroll in the academy. The masked warrior taunts him, questioning whether it matters if he gave up on the academy or lacks martial arts talent. As long as Cheon has a claim to the throne, there's only one path for him. The other masked warrior, with his sword on his shoulder, insists that resistance is futile, stating there's no other way out. He adds that even if Cheon has a mix of peasant blood, his royal lineage should at least grant him a painless death. Cheon, angered by the mention of peasant blood, reflects on how they dare insult his mother. He knows these warriors won't show him mercy, especially after how they've treated him. Accepting that he's likely to die, he resolves to fight until his last breath. The masked warrior asks if Cheon learned martial arts from his guard, Jang. Cheon realizes he didn't inherit those skills but knows he can't escape his bloodline. Determined, Cheon declares that even without training or skills, he won't surrender. The masked warrior, intrigued, orders the others to kill Cheon, and they attack. Cheon fights back but is grabbed by the neck, with the warrior mocking him, asking if this is the end of his resistance. Suddenly, Cheon draws his sword, striking and killing the warrior. He declares that it serves him right. The other warriors are shocked, wondering how a kid with no martial arts skills managed to kill one of their own. One of the masked warriors rushes in, kicks Cheon, and throws him aside, leaving him bleeding. The warrior sneers, saying that just because they went easy on him, he dared to strike back. Leaning in, the warrior presses his foot on Cheon's wound, taunting him about how it feels to have a hole in his stomach. As Cheon claws at the ground in pain, the warrior presses harder, telling him to die a slow, painful death. Another warrior, though not usually one for such brutality, agrees that since their comrade died, they have no choice. Suddenly, a beam of light shoots through the air, cutting through the chaos. The warrior who was about to strike is sliced down. The others, baffled, describe it as a beam of white light. An unknown figure steps forward, and the remaining warrior realizes this person is behind them. They prepare to attack, but the mysterious figure effortlessly fends them off, killing one of the warriors in the process. As the situation grows more confusing, the warrior begins to question why a master of such high power would defend a stupid kid like Cheon. He figures the boy has lost too much blood to survive and decides to retreat, but the mysterious figure attacks and kills him too. As the battle ends, Cheon, feeling his vision blur and his body grow cold, resigns himself to dying there. He wonders who this strange person is and why he's spouting nonsense after suddenly appearing. The stranger, seemingly out of options, presses a button on his watch. He admits he was supposed to come earlier to teach Cheon how to use it, but now they'll have to improvise. He injects something into Cheon, explaining that it's a nano machine, the latest model, so operating it should be straightforward. Cheon, cringing but accepting his fate, can't help but think that this is the strangest thing he's ever heard. As the stranger disappears, Cheon is left with a strange voice in his head. It announces that the nano machine is starting to activate, leaving Cheon more confused than ever. Prince Cheon's thoughts drift back to the origins of martial arts, recalling the era when the Jangu leaders' warriors employed their techniques for protection against adversaries. Over centuries, what began as a rudimentary method of self-defense evolved into a lethal art, characterized by intricate movements and breathing techniques that laid the groundwork for internal energy cultivation. He contemplates how martial artists, through generations, preserved and passed on their knowledge and heirlooms, ensuring the continued refinement of these disciplines. Those who mastered these arts gained power far surpassing that of ordinary individuals, becoming known as the Moram people. Cheon reflects on the formation of clans by those seeking to become disciples of the Moram people. These clans, divided by their allegiance to justice or evil, became distinct entities within the martial world, with the demonic cult lurking ominously in the background. This shadowy organization, known to the world as the demonic cult, is where Cheon, the illegitimate child of the highest-ranking family with a claim to the throne, belongs. Thus begins the tale of Prince Cheon. Awakening in an unfamiliar room, Cheon is struck by disbelief, certain that the sword had fatally wounded him. The realization that he is still alive fills him with confusion. His body is drenched in sweat, and as he examines his hand, he notices the presence of strange black spots. A voice suddenly interrupts his thoughts, addressing him as master, and confirming that he is awake. Startled, Cheon searches for the source of the voice but finds no one present. The disembodied voice advises him to remain calm, a suggestion that only deepens his bewilderment. He contemplates the possibility of telepathy, though this experience feels different, as though the voice is emanating from within his own mind. Once more, the voice reassures him, affirming that he is the rightful master. Frustration mounting, Cheon demands to know the identity of the speaker. The voice, now identifying itself as the Nano machine, reveals that it is connected to his brain and is part of Sky Corporation's 7th-generation Nano machine series. Unsettled, Cheon presses for an explanation, seeking to understand why this is happening to him. The Nano machine, unperturbed, reiterates its identity as the 7th-generation model. When Cheon inquires further about the connection to the evil god, the Nano machine calmly confirms that it is, indeed, a Nano machine, while Cheon grapples with the notion of the evil god revered by the demonic cult. Shaken, he questions whether he might, in fact, be the evil god himself. Later, Guard Jang confers with Dr. Baek, who suggests that the incident involving Cheon seems to have been an assassination attempt. Guard Jang, acknowledging the recent surge in such attempts, expresses skepticism that the attackers would have targeted him directly. Dr. Baek, however, asserts that it must have been their top guard, given the circumstances. He marvels at Cheon's survival, a feat he deems nothing short of miraculous. Guard Jang speculates that someone might have intervened to save the prince, though he cannot ascertain the identity of this mysterious benefactor. Dr. Baek, intrigued, asks if Guard Jang has any insights based on the evidence. Guard Jang nods, recalling the grisly scene he encountered the previous day. The ground was littered with the corpses of demonic cult members, most of them grotesquely mutilated. One body, however, remained relatively intact, though a dagger was lodged deep in its skull. Amidst the carnage, Guard Jang recognized the faint, labored breathing of Prince Cheon. Dr. Baek, noting the absence of visible wounds on the prince, expresses his surprise at the situation. Guard Jang concurs, pointing out that while Cheon's clothing bore signs of a sword's assault, his body remained unscathed. Puzzled, Dr. Baek suggests that it is unlikely the cult leader would have engaged in such a confrontation. Intrigued by the mystery, Dr. Baek makes his way to Cheon's room with renewed urgency. As Cheon grapples with the recent events, he questions Dr. Baek about whether he was the one who saved him. The Nano machine interjects, clarifying that while it was not responsible for saving him from his enemies, it did initiate the self-healing process that preserved his life. Cheon, caught between confusion and relief, seeks to understand what self-healing mode entails. The Nano machine explains that it transmits essential information directly to his brain. When Cheon probes further, the Nano machine reassures him that it is merely adapting its communication to be appropriate for the current context. It also clarifies that it is not connected to the evil god. Noticing a shift in the Nano machine's tone, Cheon questions its true nature. The Nano machine responds by offering to send detailed information and a user manual directly to his brain, asking for his consent. Cheon hesitantly agrees. Without warning, Cheon is overcome with nausea, and the Nano machine explains that this reaction is common when receiving new information for the first time. It assures him that he will not experience dizziness or nausea upon subsequent transmissions. As Cheon struggles with the overwhelming sensations, he questions the Nano machine, confirming that millions of machines are now operating within his body. The Nano machine affirms this, stating that 6,482,040,000 nanomachines are now functioning inside him. Bewildered, Cheon asks if these machines can be removed. The Nano machine responds that they can only be extracted upon his death. As he reflects on his dire circumstances, Cheon considers how his half-brothers have relentlessly sought his life, despite his apparent lack of strength. Now, to complicate matters further, a mysterious Nano machine has been implanted within him. He questions why these events have unfolded and who is responsible for the Nano machine's presence in his body. At that moment, Jang knocks on the door, announcing Dr. Baek's arrival. Anxious, Cheon instructs the Nano machine to remain silent, fearing that others might find him deranged if they catch him conversing with an unseen entity. The Nano machine complies, explaining that it can communicate through Cheon's thoughts and falls silent. Cheon, now whispering, acknowledges this and asks it to stay quiet. Guard Jang, noticing that the prince appears to be resting, advises everyone to maintain silence. He then asks if Prince Cheon is awake. As Cheon stirs, he becomes aware of a peculiar smell. He quickly remembers its source. Dr. Baek greets him, reminding Cheon of their prior acquaintance when the doctor treated his mother. Dr. Baek requests to check Cheon's pulse and extends his hand. Cheon complies, allowing the doctor to take his hand. As Dr. Baek examines him, he remarks on the unusual nature of the situation. Guard Jang, concerned, inquires if there is something amiss with the prince. Dr. Baek reassures him, stating that, on the contrary, this may present a rare opportunity for Prince Cheon. Intrigued, Cheon asks for clarification. Dr. Baek explains that Cheon's body has been purged of impurities, and his energy flow has been activated. He asks if Cheon has ingested any special medicine. Puzzled by the inquiry, Cheon seeks more details. Dr. Baek confirms that Cheon's body is now perfectly suited for martial arts training. Cheon observes the black, sticky residue on his body, realizing that it represents the waste expelled from his system. He then addresses the Nano machine, seeking to understand its operation. The Nano machine instructs him to deactivate silent mode. Once he does so, the Nano machine explains that the machines within him have restructured his blood vessels, joints, and muscles to optimize his physical condition. As Cheon reflects on the situation, he acknowledges that the Nano machine is not an evil god but a sophisticated piece of technology. Prince Cheon considers the intricate structure of the demonic cult, where numerous clans and families exist, yet only 6 are recognized as the main clans. He recalls the tradition that dictates the Lord must marry a woman from each of these 6 clans to ensure the continuation of his lineage, a practice that seems akin to assembling a collection of prized treasures. The offspring of these unions are raised within their respective clans, and upon reaching a certain age, they enter the demonic academy. The academy, which opens once every 10 years, is overseen by top experts from the magistrate and was established to train the finest warriors of each generation. The entrance of multiple princes into the academy invariably sparks a period of fierce rivalry, known as the Battle of the Heirs, a contest as intense as any competition, though with far greater stakes. As a faint smile crosses his lips, Cheon is reminded that Dr. Baek hails from the Poison clan and realizes the necessity of concealing the Nano machine within his body. Reassuringly, the Nano machine confirms that the technology of this era is incapable of detecting its presence. Master Dr. Baek observes that it is evident Cheon received assistance from someone. While noting that nothing appears to be amiss with Cheon's body, Dr. Baek decides to prescribe a tonic to aid in his recovery. Guard Jang expresses his gratitude and offers to escort Dr. Baek out, but the doctor declines, advising Guard Jang to focus instead on keeping a close watch over Prince Cheon. Prince Cheon reflects on the surprising changes within himself. He recalls that, in the past, he feared he would be marginalized due to his frail body and lack of martial arts proficiency. Yet, in his current state, he feels more capable than ever, confident that he could surpass the other princes in mastering martial arts. After Dr. Baek departs, Cheon is reminded that he is the illegitimate son of the Lord, a fact that he outwardly dismisses but remains inwardly curious about. If the Lord has covertly aided him, Cheon sees no need to acknowledge it. With the impending reopening of the demonic academy, he anticipates a tumultuous time ahead. Despite his newfound clarity, Prince Cheon is still coming to terms with the situation. He acknowledges that his survival is largely due to Guard Jang's timely intervention, even though the Nano machine played a crucial role in his healing. He attempts to express his gratitude to Guard Jang, but the guard, pinching his nose due to the smell, declines and instead advises Cheon to wash up. With a smile, Cheon agrees and proceeds to bathe, using the time to converse with the Nano machine. Cheon recalls his earlier inquiry about the extent of the machine's healing capabilities. The Nano machine explains that it can rapidly heal any internal or external injury caused by impact, although more severe conditions, such as blood loss or decapitation, would require more time due to the need for cell regeneration. Cheon finds the machine's terminology complex but considers the possibility of testing the device's abilities. Curious, he deliberately cuts his hand, wincing at the pain as blood begins to flow. The Nano machine instructs him to activate the self-healing mode in his left palm, and the wound swiftly closes. Though he witnesses the process firsthand, Cheon finds it difficult to fully grasp, but he now understands that the Nano machine's functions are real. He recalls the information that was previously transferred to his mind and realizes that he has access to all these abilities. The nano machine confirms that everything outlined in the instructions is now at his disposal. Amazed by this revelation, Cheon decides to experiment further once he finishes his bath. However, he notices a peculiar change in his physique. His body has become more muscular and defined. Cheon questions whether the nano machine is responsible for this transformation. The nano machine confirms this and explains that it has restructured his body for optimal performance. Unfamiliar with the term reconstruction, Cheon ponders its meaning. An elderly attendant enters the room to assist with his dressing. As the old man carries out his task, the nano machine explains that while it is scientifically impossible to create something from nothing, enhancing and reconstructing existing parts of Cheon's body is well within its capabilities. Cheon finds the nano machine's explanations so intricate that they seem to render much of his previous knowledge obsolete. He asks if he can shorten the machine's name to Nano, given its lengthy designation. The nano machine agrees to the new name. Feeling somewhat restless, Cheon contemplates his next course of action, and Nano suggests consulting a book and scanning its contents. Cheon picks up a book and reflects that most martial arts texts focus on blood points, with the 3J-Sim method being a technique for training both mind and body. However, even achieving the lowest level of mastery is a challenge. He reasons that studying blood points seems more practical and decides to begin with Nano's guidance. Nano prompts him to start, and Cheon flips through the pages, soon realizing he has finished scanning the book. Nano confirms the successful transfer of information. As the blood passage knowledge begins transferring to his brain, Cheon is asked by Nano to accept the information. He requests Nano to copy everything, and Nano confirms this is correct, initiating the process. Upon completion, Prince Cheon finds himself amused by the ease with which he has acquired the knowledge, likening it to passing a test without preparation. Nano assures him that he will soon become accustomed to this method of learning. Curious if Nano is concerned for his well-being, Cheon asks what he should do next. Nano explains that to utilize the acquired knowledge, he must actively think about it to bring it to the forefront of his mind. The nano machine elaborates on the importance of blood points in regulating the flow of blood through the veins and arteries, emphasizing their critical role. It further categorizes the points into two types, those that can immobilize and those that can kill. Prince Cheon is astounded by this revelation. Realizing that his understanding has gone beyond mere memorization, he has fully grasped the content. Nano explains that it corrected errors in the original text while transferring the information, leaving Cheon feeling as though he has been granted an unparalleled advantage. He is surprised to learn that there were indeed mistakes, and Nano clarifies that it corrected a particular error related to blood points using its advanced programming. Cheon then wonders if this means he can master martial arts more swiftly than anyone else. Cheon chuckles at the thought of the candidates from the 6 clans, who have been trained in various combat techniques since childhood, while he struggled with the basics of the 3J-Sim method. He considers the limited number of martial arts books in his possession but recalls hearing about the extensive collection at the Demonic Academy. Confident in his new abilities, he sets his sights on becoming stronger faster than anyone else at the academy, establishing this as his new objective. The scene shifts to the chamber of the heir candidate in the South Castle of the demonic cult, within the house of Baek. Prince Meum reflects on his recent actions, noting that he sent 5 men to eliminate a single boy, yet all 5 have perished. The situation strikes him as absurd, as though he has just suffered a humiliating defeat. The warrior accompanying him suggests that someone must have secretly aided the boy. Angered, Prince Meum questions how anyone dares to speak his name so freely, and the warrior quickly apologizes. Prince Meum admits that he underestimated the boy, assuming him to be an easy target due to his low status and apparent lack of intelligence. However, it now appears that the boy possesses unexpected abilities. He considers whether the boy even attempted to eliminate the guard, realizing that someone else must be offering protection as well. Reluctantly, Prince Meum concludes that he must personally deal with the boy at the Demonic Academy, a task he had hoped to avoid. Prince Cheon lies awake in his bed, unable to sleep due to the anxious thoughts swirling in his mind. He extends his hand out the window, quietly asking if morning has arrived. Gazing outside, he reflects on the day ahead when he will join the academy. He notices Guard Zhang practicing his techniques and briefly considers whether it would have been wiser to secretly learn Zhang's dagger skills. However, he quickly dismisses the thought, knowing that the ever-watchful eyes of the 6 clans would not allow him to go unnoticed. He recalls the promise he made to his late mother not to engage in martial arts training until he was admitted to the academy. The nano machine interrupts his thoughts, asking if he wishes it to scan guard Zhang's movements. Cheon, taken aback, inquires if it is truly capable of scanning another person's movements. The nano machine confirms that it can. Cheon's mind races with the possibilities this ability presents, likening it to a significant advantage. He asks if the nano machine can analyze Zhang's martial arts training and transfer the knowledge directly to him. The nano machine responds affirmatively, explaining that if the program possesses data on various martial arts techniques, it can immediately transfer this information to him. After contemplating for a moment, Cheon questions whether it is morally right to acquire guard Zhang's martial arts techniques without his consent. Ultimately, he resolves not to burden himself with regrets before entering the academy and acknowledges that there is little time to dwell on self-defense. He instructs the nano machine to proceed with the scan. The nano machine activates the movement scan and begins analyzing all of guard Zhang's techniques, informing Cheon that the process will take approximately half an hour. After some time, the nano machine reports that the scan is complete and that the transfer to Cheon's brain will now commence. Cheon feels a sense of relief, noting that the experience is less overwhelming than the previous day's events. As he sits near the window, he briefly wonders how such a thing is possible. A faint smile crosses his face as he quickly retrieves his sword, driven by the belief that he can achieve success. Glancing outside, he reminds himself to remain cautious to avoid attracting guard Zhang's attention. He begins practicing Zhang's techniques, recognizing that they bear similarities to the training Zhang underwent 2 decades earlier. As he trains, he focuses on refining his posture and mastering the techniques, questioning whether this process allows him to bypass traditional learning methods. The nano machine then informs him that, in addition to the movement scan, it has completed a muscle analysis specific to the training. It asks if he wishes to accept the transfer to his muscles as well. Cheon, aware of the necessity, agrees to the muscle transfer. The nano machine warns him that without this transfer, he will experience significant pain. Cheon collapses to the floor, writhing in pain, realizing that the cost of trying to become a martial arts prodigy overnight is steep. He questions the nano machine about the source of the pain. The nano machine explains that repeated training forms muscles suited to the movements being learned. Since Cheon's muscles have not yet developed properly, the process is causing damage. Frustrated by the complex explanation, Cheon wonders why the nano machine cannot simplify its communication. The nano machine offers to provide a simpler explanation. It explains that while Cheon's brain has absorbed the techniques, his body requires time to adapt. Since he has not undergone years of training like guard Zhang, the machine states that his muscles must be stimulated to fully internalize the movements. Only after this simulation can Cheon effectively utilize the techniques. Despite the clarification, Cheon still finds the process difficult to grasp. The nano machine then offers to adjust the language settings to a more basic level. Cheon, still in pain, asks if the muscle transfer can be made pain-free. The nano machine confirms that the process will require a few hours and will engage every nano machine in his body. With time before he must leave, Cheon decides to proceed. The nano machine warns him that the transfer will cause significant pain and that he will soon be placed under anesthesia. Cheon, concerned, asks if the pain will be severe. The nano machine reveals that there have been 135,000 cases where individuals have fainted during this type of muscle transfer. Cheon considers attempting the transfer without anesthesia and inquires if it is possible. The nano machine confirms that he can switch to anesthesia if necessary. As the transfer begins, Cheon initially feels only a mild discomfort, which he interprets as tickling. However, he groans in pain and collapses onto his bed, realizing that his initial perception was far from accurate. Meanwhile, guard Zhang is in the kitchen preparing a meal. He tastes the food and comments to himself that it is as good as what most of the local masters can cook. He decides to prepare a simple dish that he knows Prince Cheon enjoys, hoping it will not turn out to be another culinary failure. As he chops vegetables, guard Zhang reflects on the 5 years he has spent learning to cook for Prince Cheon. He recalls a time when his cooking skills were far from adequate and remembers Lady Hua entrusting him with her son's care. Guard Zhang also recalls the tragic circumstances of Lady Hua's death from poisoned food and acknowledges that Prince Cheon is about to embark on a new chapter by entering the academy. He silently prays for Lady watch over her son from the afterlife, hoping that Cheon will survive the challenges ahead and return to enjoy another meal. Suddenly, guard Zhang hears a shout from Prince Cheon's room. He drops the knife and rushes to check on him. Entering the room, he finds Prince Cheon lying motionless on his bed. Guard Zhang repeatedly calls out to him but receives no response. He checks the prince's pulse and finds nothing visibly wrong, though he questions whether this is intentional. Noticing footprints on the floor, guard Zhang ponders whose they might be. Reflecting on the situation, he realizes that Prince Qion has been observing his training for nearly 2 years, and is amazed that the prince may have already caught up to his own 2 decades of experience. The nano machine informs Prince Qion that the muscle and fiber transfer has been successfully completed and deactivates the anesthesia. As he awakens, he stands up, resolving never to repeat such an experience. Why he was lying down and whether guard Zhang had entered the room, shouting. Prince Qion retrieves his dagger and begins practicing the technique. The nano machine explains that the muscle transfer has granted him the same physical prowess as those who have practiced these movements for 2 decades. As he continues practicing, he notices a newfound precision and power in his movements, finding a certain satisfaction in the way his blade cuts through the air. He completes the first formation and moves on to the second, only to realize that the floor beneath him is beginning to break. Although he didn't utilize Nigong, the marks left behind make him concerned that they might suggest he has already mastered Wang. He worries about the possibility of guard Zhang noticing. Just then, guard Zhang calls out that breakfast is ready. Alarmed, Prince Qion quickly tries to fix the marks on the floor, aware that they won't easily disappear. Guard Zhang enters, calling out once more. Prince Qion hastily sets the table and mentions that he's hungry. He casually asks if he usually eats by the window, but then explains that he wanted to face the center of the room since he won't be home for a while. He forces a smile, hoping guard Zhang doesn't notice anything amiss. His eyes fall on his favorite foods, stir-fried bok choy, roast pork rice, and a fried egg, and he feels a deep appreciation for the care guard Zhang has taken, realizing this may be the last breakfast guard Zhang prepares for him before he leaves for the academy. The nano machine advises him to swallow his food with saliva to help settle the acid. Irritated, Prince Qion mutes the nano machine and focuses on eating. Guard Zhang advises him to eat slowly to avoid indigestion. Prince Qion agrees, carefully places his chopsticks on the table, and remarks that the meal was satisfying. Guard Zhang then asks if Prince Qion plans to stay, and encourages him to continue practicing his dagger technique. Confused by guard Zhang's words, Prince Qion watches as he clears the table. Looking down at the floor, Prince Qion notices that the marks left from his movements during the second formation of the technique are more distinct than before, confirming his earlier thoughts. He recognizes that stealing martial arts techniques is a grave offense in Morum and feels a deep sense of guilt for using the nano machine's capabilities. He worries that guard Zhang might be angry with him. However, guard Zhang reassures him, saying it's acceptable if he learned in secret. He explains that, as Prince Qion's guard, he would have taught him the technique sooner if not for the oath of the 6 clans. Guard Zhang hands Prince Qion an envelope containing an energy flow method for the Nigong of the dagger technique and advises him to take advantage of what the academy offers as well. Reflecting on the past, guard Zhang remembers his late mother and vows not to cry again. He recalls the hardships he has endured over the past 5 years while caring for Prince Qion, who still longs for his parents' affection. Guard Zhang resolves that while he may cry today, he must become stronger for the future. He silently thanks Prince Qion and decides to face whatever lies ahead without fear. As he leaves, closing the door behind him, he thinks that even though his mother is no longer with him, he still has a place to call home. The scene transitions to the academy, where the disciples are lined up. One student inquires if all the clans have gathered, estimating the number to be around 1,000. Another student expresses nervousness about being at the academy, while a third notes that this is a competition among the heirs of smaller clans, urging the others to stay in line. Left Guardian Fire King Li Hua Mayung arrives, criticizing the noise and lack of discipline among the disciples. He comments on their apparent lack of resolve, questioning whether they have come here without the determination necessary for what could be their final chance. Some students recognize him as one of the top 10 strongest in the demonic cult, with some speculating that he might be among the top 5. Meanwhile, Li Hua Mayung scans the front row, identifying the heirs of the 6 clans, and he wonders where Qion, the 7th heir, could be.
To be continued. If you want to watch the next part, then like and subscribe and let me know in the comment of what recap you want to watch next.